Hello, I'm Callie. I thought I was going on a healing trip with my sister and her friends, but they left me stranded in a tiny village in Provence. No phone, no wallet, no goodbye. At first, I thought it was just a bad joke. But then, emails were sent in my name, my job disappeared, and videos of me crying started showing up online. Was this really just a prank? Or had they planned to erase me all along? Why would your own family go this far to shut you out? They thought it would be funny. One big, harmless joke. A group prank I was too uptight to get. That's what they'd say later, if they ever bothered to say anything at all. I stood on the side of a narrow cobblestone road in Saint-Laurent-de-Lys, watching the taillights of the rented van flicker, then vanish down the hill like a bad punchline. The breeze carried lavender and dust. I stood there, blinking in disbelief, gripping the strap of my bag like it was the last anchor to the world I thought I knew. They'll be back, I told myself out loud. 5 minutes, 10. But the minutes stacked like bricks in my throat. Nothing but quiet, the clink of cutlery from an outdoor cafe, and polite but puzzled glances from locals who didn't speak English. A child tugged at his mother's sleeve and pointed at me. I managed a stiff smile. My hands were already sweating. I checked my phone. Dead. Of course it was. No charger, no adapter. Monica had promised she packed the backup. "You always overthink everything," she'd said, rolling her eyes at me as she shoved clothes into her pink monogrammed suitcase. I hadn't replied. I reached into my purse. Wallet? Gone. Probably left in the van, tucked into the seat pocket with my sunglasses. I counted the cash in my side pouch, 83 euros and some change. That's all I had. And then it hit me. This wasn't a mistake. They meant to leave me. 2 nights earlier, we'd had dinner at a vineyard just outside Aix. It was supposed to be the healing moment of the trip. Monica toasted to new beginnings, while Dylan kept topping off everyone's wine. The table laughed a little too hard when I declined my 3rd glass. "You're still in divorce mode, huh?" Monica said, loud enough for the waiter to glance over. "Girl, it's a trip. You can't mess this one up, too." I remember pushing my chair back quietly, muttering something about needing air. I waited for someone, anyone, to come check on me. No one did. I should have known then. I think I did. The sun was dropping lower now. I wandered through the village, heart pounding, unsure if I was walking toward help or just trying to look less abandoned. Everything felt surreal, too picturesque to hold something so cruel. The bakeries were closing, the shops dimming. No familiar signs, no tourists. A narrow alley led me to a bakery. The windows were foggy with warmth, and the smell of butter hit me like a memory I couldn't place. Inside, an older woman in a flour-dusted apron stood behind the counter. She looked up and paused when she saw my face. Her eyes softened. No English, but kindness doesn't always need translation. She pointed to a wooden chair and the wall outlet. I smiled. A crack of hope. I plugged my phone in, but nothing happened. Wrong voltage, wrong adapter, wrong continent. I don't know what showed on my face, but the woman, Martha, I'd learn later, crossed the room and rested a hand on my shoulder. A wordless gesture. Gentle. It nearly broke me. I stared at the useless charger and felt the grief settle. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet and sharp, like realizing you've been talking to an empty room. Like waking up and knowing you were never the favorite child. This wasn't a petty prank. It was something else. A purge. A deliberate forgetting. They didn't want me to come back. Not to Boston. Not to them. Not to anything that reminded them I existed outside their curated lives. I came here to heal. To reset after a divorce that unstitched a decade of my life. And now, I'd been discarded like luggage that didn't match the aesthetic. Fine. If they meant to scare me, it worked. But now I was just angry. At some point in the night, I must have fallen asleep sitting up. My neck ached, and the hard chair beneath me had left lines across my thighs. Outside the bakery window, morning had settled in, soft golden light spilling onto the cobblestones, the scent of rising bread warming the air like a blanket. Martha appeared from the back room, holding a tangled knot of cords and plugs. Her fingers fumbled through them until she pulled out something old and slightly yellowed. She held it out to me with a hopeful look and gestured toward my phone. It was a UK adapter, the kind people forget in rental flats and never return for. "Try this," she said, in heavily accented English. A rare gift, 2 words I didn't expect. I thanked her, plugged it in, and waited. The screen blinked once. Then again. A low buzz. Battery? 1%. Enough to flicker to life. Not enough for anything else. I tapped the power button, praying. Before I could open a single app, the screen lit up with an incoming call. Reed. I hadn't seen that name in months. The name alone made my chest go tight. The bakery around me blurred for a second, like someone had yanked me back across the ocean. My thumb hovered over decline, but something made me answer. "Hello?" His voice came through clear, smooth, like it always had, like nothing had happened. "Callie," he said. "Finally." I didn't speak. He filled the silence fast. "Your mom's worried. I mean, really worried. Monica called me in tears." Liar. Monica hadn't shed a tear in a decade unless it was for a photo. "You just disappeared," he continued, as if I hadn't been dumped in another country like forgotten luggage. "You always do this. Shut down. Vanish when it gets hard." "I didn't vanish," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I was left." He sighed, like I was a child who still didn't get the lesson. "Look, maybe the timing was off, but everyone's under stress. You have to stop taking everything so personally." I pressed the phone tighter to my ear, heart thudding. I knew this dance. Reed never yelled. He was never the villain. Just endlessly, reasonable, calm, always angling the mirror to show your own reflection and ask what's wrong with you. "I talked to your mom again," he said casually. "She's devastated. Your dad doesn't even know where you are. Do you realize how selfish this looks?" "I didn't ask for any of this." "No," he said, a beat too quick, "but you sure know how to make it about you." There it was, the real tone, polite on the surface, poison underneath. "You need to come home, Callie. You're not going to fix anything out there. You can't heal surrounded by strangers and whatever it is you think you're doing." I stayed silent. Every word he said pressed on old bruises. Then came the line that snapped everything. "I know Provence isn't ideal, but maybe you'll come back a little clearer. A little cleaner." Cleaner? I froze. I hadn't told anyone where I was. Not even the village name. I hadn't tagged a location. Hadn't posted anything. But Reed knew. He didn't say it like a guess. He said it like he'd seen it. That call wasn't concern. It was surveillance in disguise. I didn't yell. I didn't plead. I just said, "Goodbye, Reed," and hung up. I sat there for a long time, breathing shallow, letting it wash through me. Then I stood and walked to the bakery's doorway. Outside, the sun lit up a distant row of olive trees that stretched like arms into the hills. Quiet, steady, rooted. "I'm not your mess to clean up," I whispered. "Not anymore." I didn't sleep much that night. The phone call with Reed had frayed every nerve, and even the comforting scent of yeast and sugar drifting in from the bakery couldn't calm the static inside my chest. By morning, I needed to move. Sitting still made me feel hunted. The village market stretched along the main square, woven with bright umbrellas and wooden crates stacked with tomatoes, peaches, and bottles of olive oil. I didn't have a plan, only the urge to look normal, blend in, browse, pretend I belonged. I picked up a small basket and wandered between the stalls, grabbing a loaf of crusty bread, a handful of apricots, and a bottle of water. I was reaching for a bunch of thyme when someone bumped into me hard enough to jostle my bag. "Oh, I'm so sorry," a woman said, her voice too cheerful. She had shoulder-length hair the color of honey and sunglasses perched on her head. Though the day was cloudy, she smiled like we were old friends. Callie, right? I froze. My name hadn't passed a stranger's lips since I landed in France. I didn't know this woman. I searched her face for a flicker of recognition, but there was none. Only that smooth, curated smile. Didn't we meet at that vineyard tour in Avignon? She offered, tilting her head. Or maybe you're friends with Monica? My stomach clenched. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Every instinct screamed that something was off. Before I could ask her anything, where she was from, who she knew, she smiled wider and disappeared into the crowd with a breezy, "Take care!" I stood there for a full minute, clutching my basket like a shield. Then I walked away, slowly, then faster. How did she know my name? The question rang louder than any bell tower. Back at the bakery, I ducked into the rear room where Martha stored flour and cleaned vegetables. She looked up from peeling carrots and gave me that same steady glance I was beginning to rely on. I offered a nod, silent reassurance that I was okay. Sort of. Once I connected to the bakery's patchy Wi-Fi, my phone pinged with delayed notifications. I opened my email. Among the spam and subscription newsletters was a single message from my mother. Subject line, from Homebody. Sweetheart, Monica told us you're not well. If you need help, please don't shut us out again. We're all worried. This behavior isn't like you. My hands tightened around the phone. So that was the angle now. I wasn't just lost. I was unstable. The same storyline they had fed our family years ago when I cried through my first miscarriage, when I stopped smiling after the divorce. Monica had always known how to play the part, the capable one, the fixer. She'd walk into a room with her shiny hair and flawless posture and say things like, "She just needs space," or, "It's a lot for her right now." But what she really meant was, "Don't believe her. Believe me." I remembered a Christmas years ago, sitting at the dinner table, trying to explain to my parents that Reed had cut me out of our joint accounts. Monica had laughed. "That's not abuse, Callie. It's marriage. Grow up." And they'd nodded. Because Monica always sounded more reasonable. My eyes burned as I walked behind the bakery, past a row of potted herbs, into the clearing beyond. I sank to the ground. This wasn't just about being stranded. It was about being rewritten. Again. Recast as the emotional one. The problem. The version of me that Monica could manage, contain, dismiss. I tilted my head toward the sky, blinking hard. "They've got the script," I muttered. "They just needed me to vanish so they could narrate it." I stayed there for a while, letting the quiet press into me, letting the rage cool and crystallize. Then I wiped my face with my sleeve, stood up, and walked back through the alleyway. I wasn't spiraling. I wasn't broken. And if they wanted a version of me, they could explain away. They were about to meet the one they couldn't. The words came easily once I stopped trying to soften them. It was past midnight. The bakery had gone silent. Martha had long since gone upstairs, and I sat in the back office with the lights dimmed and my laptop screen the only glow in the room. The email cursor blinked like a dare. Subject line, "You don't get to define me, Monica. You left me on a curb in a country I barely speak the language of. No warning, no explanation, just laughter fading behind a slammed van door." I paused, then continued. "I spent the first hour thinking it was a joke, the second hoping it was a test. By hour 3, I understood it was neither." Each sentence dropped like a stone. There was no venom, just the weight of truth. I'm not writing this for an apology. I know better. I'm writing because you've spent years rewriting my life in your words. Not this time. I ended with, "You don't get to define me anymore." And then, I hit send. The email didn't make me feel lighter. It didn't bring closure or triumph. It just made something still. Like I had finally shut a door and locked it from the inside. I slept for 3 hours. When I woke, it was to the scent of cinnamon and apricots and the faint vibration of my phone. New message, Monica. "OMG, you're okay. So relieved. I told Mom you probably just needed time to breathe." Everyone kinda panicked, lol. Hopefully we'll laugh about this someday. Emoji, heart, sparkle, butterfly. I stared at the screen like it had teeth. There was no apology, no mention of what happened, just bubble-wrapped condescension and a thin layer of performance. She wasn't acknowledging the harm. She was preparing the story for everyone else. The good sister who held it all together. The broken one who ran off. That same tired script. I didn't respond. Instead, I took out the notebook Martha had given me when I first arrived. I hadn't written in it until now. I turned to a blank page and in big letters I wrote, "Who I am." Then underneath, not Monica's version, not Reed's ex-wife, not someone who needs managing, not broken, not missing, not yours. I filled 3 more pages. I didn't stop to edit or second guess. I just let it pour out. Everything I'd traded away for peace, for approval, for silence. The sun was climbing when I finally came out front. Martha stood by the counter kneading dough, humming something low. She glanced up as I passed and said, "You have stronger eyes today." I blinked. "Excuse me?" She smiled gently, pointed to her face. "Before, your eyes were heavy. Today, sharp." I didn't know how to respond, so I just nodded. "Thanks. I think I needed someone to say that." Later that afternoon, I wandered into town again. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. My steps felt different, grounded. I passed the bookstore, the wine shop. I looked at the world with a sense of space, of choice. Monica's email hadn't rattled me. It had confirmed everything I already knew. But by sunset, I would learn Monica and Reed had already taken something else from me. It started with a scroll. I was sitting in the back courtyard behind the bakery, feet up on a cracked bench, soft golden light filtering through grapevines above. I hadn't planned to check my old email. That account had become a graveyard. Expired coupons, forgotten subscriptions, the occasional spam from a wellness blog I didn't remember subscribing to. But something made me open it. The inbox loaded slow, and then there it was. 5 messages stacked one after the other, all from Dana, my former design mentor. My lifeline when I was still figuring out where creativity ended and survival began. The first was dated 2 months ago. "Callie, hope you're well. I've got a remote project I think you'd be perfect for. Eco-architecture, flexible hours, full autonomy. Let me know if you're interested." My throat tightened. The next email was a gentle follow-up. Then another. The 4th was shorter. I didn't hear back, so assuming it's a pass. And then came the 5th, forwarded. Below it, a line chilled my blood. "Thanks for thinking of me, but I've moved on from design. Best of luck." It was from my account. I never sent it. My hands trembled as I reread the message. It was polite, neutral, just enough distance to make it seem final. But I knew that tone. It wasn't mine. It was Reed's. Years ago, he'd helped me simplify by merging our logins, linking accounts, taking little things off my plate. He said I needed to focus on healing. He said it with that voice he used when he didn't want me to argue. I'd nodded. Back then, nodding was easier. Now I saw it for what it was. Control. They hadn't just stranded me in Provence. They'd sabotaged the one thing that could have brought me back to life, my work. Martha found me moments later, hunched over the table, breath shallow. She sat without asking, and waited while I typed frantically into Google Translate. I turned the screen to her. "This," I said. "This is what they took." She read the translation, blinked slowly, then said in her soft accent, "They want you small." I didn't answer. She reached over, tapped the center of my chest with 2 fingers. "You are not small." Something cracked open in me, not with a scream, not with a sob. It was a quiet, burning clarity. I went inside and pulled out my notebook. I drew a line down the middle of the page. Left side, what they've taken, my wallet, my location, my voice, my career. Right side, what I still have, my mind, my hands, my memory, my truth. At the bottom, I wrote, what they never expected. I kept the receipts. By nightfall, I had created a new email account. Something clean, something untainted. I drafted a message to Dana. Subject: that wasn't me. Body: hi Dana, I just saw your messages and wanted you to know. I never replied. Someone else did. I'm still here, still designing, still interested. Attaching a fresh portfolio, some old pieces, some new sketches. Nothing polished but honest. I hesitated for a moment, then clicked send. It wasn't about getting the job. It was about reclaiming the door they tried to seal shut behind me. It was late, the kind of late where even the crickets had gone quiet. The air outside was heavy with the scent of lavender and cooling stone. I'd just finished dinner with Martha. Bread, goat cheese, tomatoes still warm from the sun. My hands still smelled of basil. The message was from Harper. Harper, a friend from back home. More of a former colleague now. We hadn't spoken since the divorce. Hey, is this really you? There was a link. My stomach dropped. I tapped it. The screen loaded. TikTok. The username, @DylanDoesTruth. The video opened with shaky footage. Me, sitting on the curb outside the cafe where they'd left me. My face streaked with sweat and mascara. Eyes darting. Voice too soft to hear. Then a quick cut to me, walking aimlessly through the village. Shoulders slumped, lips moving like I was talking to myself. Overlay text. Sometimes you just can't save people from themselves. Cut to Dylan's voice, spliced from somewhere else. We tried. We really did. But she wasn't well. You can't force someone to want help. Background music. Soft, haunting piano. The comment section was worse. Yikes. Poor Monica, dealing with this kind of drama. This girl needs serious help. You can see it in her eyes. She's gone. I dropped the phone. It clattered against the stone floor, the video still playing. I wasn't just being erased. I was being rewritten. My rage didn't come in a scream. It came as stillness, focus. I picked up the phone, walked to the far end of the courtyard, and sat on the step by the herb garden. Then I opened my camera roll. Months ago, at the vineyard dinner, the night Monica mocked my divorce, I'd filmed a short clip. The lighting was low, but the audio was sharp. Dylan slurring his words, Monica rolling her eyes, someone whispering, "She's not gonna last the whole trip." I uploaded it to my laptop, clipped out a 10-second section, overlaid it with a single sentence. Full context is coming. Then I paused. I didn't want revenge. I wanted truth. So I opened a blank document. I began typing what really happened. The timeline. The night at the vineyard. The fight. The van. The bakery. The stolen job. The email I never sent. I backed it up with dates, screenshots, journal pages, faces, words, context. Then I turned to Martha, who was watching from the doorway, arms crossed over her apron. "I need to say something," I told her, "but it has to be in French." She nodded, disappeared, then returned with a pen and a notepad. We worked on it together. No one has the right to erase your voice. She underlined it, then smiled. By midnight, I had posted a new video. No music, no filter. Just me, sitting in the courtyard, reading my letter. First in French, then in English. I didn't cry. I didn't blink too much. I looked into the lens like I was speaking to the person who mattered most. Myself. The caption read, "They took the narrative. I'm taking it back." I turned off the phone. They didn't back down, so I didn't either. The next morning came quietly. Too quietly. The usual hum of the village waking up felt muted. Or maybe it was just me. My nerves, raw after the post, were pulling at the edges of every sound. I hadn't slept, not really. I'd turned the phone off after hitting publish, but my mind kept spinning. I was in the middle of folding fresh linens when my inbox pinged. Dana. Subject: need to talk. Urgent. Her message was short. "Hey Callie, quick heads up. Someone reached out to our team last week claiming to be your legal representative. They submitted a portfolio under your name. The work looks like yours. Just tweaked. Watermarked by a company I've never heard of. It felt off, thought I'd check. My heart stopped. Attached was a JPEG. I opened it. It was mine, my design. The rustic modern cafe concept I'd sketched after the divorce. My layout, my palette, even the same notes about repurposed wood and natural light. But my name was gone. In its place, a slick new logo, Vantage Studio. A company I didn't know, a watermark I didn't create. My blood went cold. They hadn't just tried to discredit me online. They were trying to be me. I immediately dialed Dana. Her voice was calm, professional, but I could hear the hesitation. I thought it was strange, she said, so I asked for credentials. The reply came from a man named R. Davis. Said he was your brother-in-law and had power of attorney. I sat down. Hard. Reed. Of course it was Reed. Did he send anything else? I asked. Dana hesitated. Yeah, a signed release. Digital. Looked official. I closed my eyes, jaw tight. I never signed anything. And I hadn't. Not a release. Not a waiver. Nothing. But years ago, Reed had helped clean up my digital life after the marriage started falling apart. He had my old passwords, my digital signature stored on our joint drive. He'd used it. They were using me as their ghost designer. I hung up and paced the courtyard in front of the farmhouse. I could hear Martha inside humming, the scent of orange zest drifting from the kitchen window. I pulled up my Google Drive, frantically typing keywords. Found it. My original cafe design file. Time-stamped. Metadata intact. The layers, the process. A digital fingerprint. Proof. I brought my laptop into the local cafe, where the owner, Lucian, spoke good English. Between his spotty legal knowledge and my translator app, we crafted a cease and desist letter. I forwarded it to Dana, along with the metadata and a new digital signature. Subject line, "This is mine." She responded in minutes. Got it. This helps. I'm pulling back from the other submission. For a moment, I just sat there, hands shaking, staring at the screen. They hadn't just stranded me. They'd tried to build their future with the blueprints of my pain. That night, as the sun fell behind the hills, I sat on the porch with Martha. She brought out 2 mugs of tea and a blanket. We didn't speak much. I watched the olive trees sway and whispered. They tried to bury me with my own roots, but I still have the seeds. She didn't ask what I meant. She just reached over and placed a notepad on the armrest beside me. At the top, she'd written in careful script, Cabinet d'Avocats, Paris. A law firm. Her eyes met mine, steady. Tomorrow I'd call them. But for now, I sat still, not silenced, not erased, just ready. The letter was taped right below the iron latch, flapping gently in the morning breeze. Martha spotted it first when she stepped out with her basket of herbs. She didn't open it, just walked back in and handed it to me like it was a bomb. No name, no return address. The envelope wasn't sealed, just folded neatly, like whoever delivered it wanted speed over formality. Inside was 1 sheet of printer paper, no letterhead, just 12 words. Leave this alone. You've made your point. Don't push it further. I stared at it for a full minute before I realized I was gripping it so tightly my knuckles had gone white. It wasn't signed. Of course it wasn't. But I knew the voice behind those keys. It was the same one that always smiled too wide when I called out the truth. The same tone Reed used when he said, "Let's not make this messy." Martha looked at me, puzzled. Bad news. I handed it over, then pulled out my phone and translated aloud. She read it twice, then met my eyes and shrugged. Good, now they are scared. I laughed once, sharp. That's supposed to scare me, she tilted her head. It only works if you're not already mad. I folded the paper and slipped it into the side pocket of my notebook. No shredding, no burning. I wanted a record of every threat dressed as politeness. I went inside and opened my laptop. 1 folder, labeled Proof. Inside, every timeline I'd built, every screenshot from Dana, the forged email headers, metadata files from my original sketches, A copy of the video Reed edited. A screenshot of the message from Dylan. The legal release with my digital signature, plus my original file showing I'd never authorized anything. I clicked share and sent the entire drive to 2 email addresses. legal@harrowandlentz.fr, Paris law firm Martha had helped me find. Candice.wu@nylawpro.com, Dana's referral. I added a short note. I don't want to sue them yet, but I want the facts to exist somewhere besides my head. If they come again, I won't be unprepared. I hit send and leaned back, watching the blue bar crawl across the screen until it confirmed. Delivered. By mid-afternoon, the nerves had settled into a steady hum of focus. I took a walk through the village, passing the narrow alleyway that led to the courtyard. I stopped for a moment outside the tiny bookstore and watched a young couple inside pick out postcards. They laughed together, touched shoulders. That used to be me and Reed once, before the silencing, the reshaping, the rewrites. I walked on. Later that night, I sat at the bakery's kitchen table with my laptop open again. There was one more thing to do. I opened a new message. No subject. To Monica Davis. I didn't start with hi. I didn't start with dear. I just wrote, this stops here. Not because you asked, but because I say so. That was it. I didn't sign it. I didn't need to. I hit send. Then I closed the laptop and exhaled. It wasn't over, not legally, not emotionally. But the part where they got to write my story? That part was done. I curled up on the little couch near the window, watching the moon rise over the olive trees. This place, the one they thought would break me, had become my mirror. Not of who I used to be, but of who I refused to stop becoming. I didn't win back everything I'd lost, but I reclaimed the only thing that ever really mattered: myself. The morning after the letter, I brewed tea without rushing. The air had shifted. It wasn't lighter, not yet. But it wasn't crushing me anymore either. The first email came from Dana. We've submitted the formal complaint. The Paris team confirmed a few irregularities in the submission documents, names and sign-offs being flagged. Just wanted you to know, it's in motion. I didn't reply right away. Just sat with the weight of it. Not fear, finality. A few hours later, another message came in. Dylan's video has been taken down across all channels. No statement. Just gone. Not an apology. Not even an acknowledgement. But it was something. I didn't need their guilt. I didn't even need the court to agree with me, though I hoped it would. I just needed the paper trail to exist. I needed the truth where it couldn't be rewritten anymore. That was done. By the end of that week, I was officially onboarded as a remote consultant for Dana's firm. The work was sporadic, mostly layout concepts and mood boards, but every email, every assignment felt like a stitch in my own skin, being sewn back with my own hands. I also started contributing to a local blog in Provence, an English-language lifestyle site that spotlighted creative expats. My first piece? Designing in Silence. How leaving Boston gave me back my voice. Martha printed it out and taped it behind the register. In return, I helped her digitize her menu. We sat for hours one evening, translating pastry names and adjusting font sizes. She called it Très Modern, and when the screen blinked to life with a sample menu, she clapped like I'd performed a magic trick. I was still here, and I was building something real. One crisp morning, just as the scent of warm figs filled the bakery's courtyard, Jacques from the hardware shop dropped by. "I hear you're good with design," he said, cradling a basket of olives. "We need someone to help with signs for the harvest route." Then he paused. "Also, we could use an extra hand picking, if you're not too busy." I smiled. I have 2 hands and nowhere else to be. That weekend, I stood barefoot in the middle of an olive grove, mud streaking my arms, my laugh echoing louder than I expected. There was no stage, no filter, just me and the trees and a basket that kept tipping sideways. No one asked me about Monica, or Reed, or Boston. And I didn't offer, not out of secrecy, but because, for the first time, they weren't the loudest thing in my life anymore. One evening, I returned to the bench outside the bakery, the same one where I'd once sat stunned and silent, trying to understand how people who claimed to love me could vanish like that. I pulled out my journal and wrote, "That version of me would never believe we made it here." Then, I added a line underneath. "Some roots get ripped out. Some get replanted. I'm both." I closed the notebook and stared at the hills, the trees catching the last light of day. Before bed, I checked my email one last time. A single unread message. From Monica Davis, subject, "None. I hope you're well. Maybe someday we can talk." I didn't delete it. I didn't respond either. Instead, I placed my phone face down, turned off the light, and slipped into sleep with the windows open. The wind moved gently through the olive branches, like a breath I could finally exhale. I wasn't healed completely. I didn't need to be. But I was whole enough to keep walking forward, on ground I had chosen. Maybe I'll tell the full story someday. But for now, I have bread to bake and sketches to finish. And that's more than enough. Sometimes the people who hurt you the most aren't strangers. They're the ones who shared your childhood, your holidays, your home. And when they rewrite your story to make themselves look better, it can feel like you've lost everything: your voice, your worth, your truth. But here's what I've learned. You don't have to stay silent to keep the peace. You don't have to keep shrinking so others feel bigger. And you don't have to wait for permission to take your life back. For a long time, I thought healing meant going back to who I was. But now I know. It means becoming who I was never allowed to be. So if you've ever felt erased, abandoned, or made to feel like you were too much or not enough, I want you to know you are not alone, and you are not broken. You are becoming. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly what they feared most. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to rebuild from a betrayal? Did this story remind you of something you've lived through? Or still trying to rise above? If this video touched something in you, drop A or just type 1 in the comments. And if it didn't resonate with you, that's okay too. Let me know what didn't click. I genuinely want to grow with this community. If you'd like to hear more stories like this, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Thanks for being here. You matter.